Let's remember the Lord's Prayer. But specifically, I want to talk about the little footnote that talks about the Lord's Prayer, or talks about a part of the Lord's Prayer. But I'll read first the the Lord's Prayer, which I don't have. There it is. Okay. So this is going to come out of Matthew chapter 6. There's two different times where the Lord's Prayer is spoken of, but this is out of Matthew chapter 6. And Jesus says this: "Whenever you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, because they love to pray, standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by people. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you pray, go into your private room, shut your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. When you pray, don't babble like the Gentiles, since they imagine they'll be heard for their many words. Don't be like them, because your Father knows the things you need before you ask them. Therefore, you should pray like this: Our Father in heaven, your name be honored as holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one." And now the footnote goes on. Verse 14 says this: "For if you forgive others their offenses, your heavenly Father will forgive you as well. But if you don't forgive others, your Father will not forgive your offenses." Jesus is teaching his disciples how to pray to the Father, and what he is saying is that you need to forgive others in order to be forgiven by God your Father. I almost want to ask the question, what do you think that means? Does anybody want to answer? What is he saying there? I mean, here, let me reread it. "For if you forgive others their offenses, your heavenly Father will forgive you as well. But if you don't forgive others, your Father will not forgive your offenses." This is Jesus speaking. Does it sound to you like we had better forgive, or we are going to face the wrath of God, the condemnation of God? That's what it sounds like, right? At a normal face reading, judgment. It sounds like we'll be judged. That's scary, but that's not what he's saying. Because if he was saying that, well then, we actually can lose our salvation after having gained our salvation, after having received our salvation. So he can't be saying that, because we know that it's faith alone. It's not forgiveness alone. It's not forgive and you shall be saved. It's believe and you shall be saved. But here's the thing. Two reasons why it can't be the plain wooden literal reading that we would have, which is, if we don't forgive, God is going to unforgive us. Okay? Two things. One, we know it's only by belief in Jesus that we get to heaven. It's not by works. Forgiving someone is a work. That's a works. So it can't be that. And second, you can forgive people without believing in Jesus and still go to hell. Look at all the religions of the world almost. Buddhism, look at, like, everybody believes forgiveness is a good thing and we should forgive, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to heaven who forgives. So what is Jesus saying? Here's what it is. There's judicial forgiveness. There is a satisfying of the law, the legal demand of God. And Jesus did that. He satisfied the judicial decree of God, the justice He satisfied that by paying the penalty for us. And now when he says, pray to your Father who is in heaven, he's saying you have a relationship with God. He is your Father. And in our relationships, if there is unforgiveness going on, our relationship is broken. It's disrupted. And what he's saying is if you want your relationship with God to be good, part of that is keeping yourself cleaned up and forgiving others. We can't be holding grudges against others and expect to just have this good line of communication with God. It breaks fellowship. It's relational forgiveness. God doesn't disown his children. I would never disown my child. But I know that my child better not be a hypocrite and ask his brother to do something or not forgive his brother, or there's going to be disruption between me and that child. That's what's going on. That's what God's saying. That's what Jesus is saying. Judicial forgiveness has been purchased for all who put their faith in Jesus. The law has been satisfied. It's been nailed up to the cross. But relational forgiveness, that's us. We got to keep our side of the street clean. And Jesus says one way that we do this is by forgiving others their sins. This is not meant to be scary. This is meant to be good news. Because if you ever come across this passage while reading Matthew, you don't have to be alarmed, because what Jesus is saying is if you're praying to God the Father, that means he's your Father. And while you're doing that, other places it says hey, if you have something going on over here, go clean that up before you come to pray. That's all he's saying. And so I just thought it would be a good reminder for us and a good lesson. When I come to the text, I have to struggle and wrestle. I remember preaching this. It took me a whole week to finally come to terms with what Jesus was saying. I was scared to death. I'm like, man, we could lose our salvation here. But it's not that. It's relational. And it just means we got to forgive. We can't be holding grudges. If we want our relationship with God the Father to be unhindered. So it's good news. We have God the Father because the judicial forgiveness we needed, Jesus purchased.